we can go ahead and get started. So, welcome. And if you want to go ahead and give us a brief introduction about yourself, who are you? What do you do? All that kind of stuff.
Yes. Well, hello everyone. My name is Anairi. A word I've just been running with for the last couple of years is creative. I feel like that's the best way I can describe myself, just overall. Any way you can think about it, I'm going to try to make it creative. I'm going to try to put my touch on it. That's from my hair, my makeup, my clothes, my room, even how I talk. I will make up words in the middle of a sentence. So that's first and foremost. I'm definitely a creative. I am also the host of the I Wasn't Not Enough the First Time podcast, where I hope that it gets across to people. I want it to be a space where we talk about instances and circumstances in our lives where maybe we didn't have a lot of self-esteem or we second guessed ourselves and we didn't speak up the first time about it. So what I do is I have other creatives, entrepreneurs, artists come onto the platform and we talk about those type of instances and also what they're currently doing and how they are dedicated along their path with standing up, drawing the attention to themselves, but also in that process, inspiring other people.
That is awesome. I love what you're doing. I've listened to a few of your episodes and they're so good. And it always just sounds like such a natural flow in conversation. So I love that. It doesn't feel like staged or anything crazy. So I'd love to know a little bit more about the backstory of your podcast. What was the instance, or how did you come up with the name? And yeah, just tell us a little bit more about that.
So I'll give like a little background of how I even got the journey to having the podcast, and then the name is very significant and special, so I'll go there as well. So the
Awesome.
background is that growing up, I think I was naturally, kind of like bright and talkative, but a lot of that was suppressed, especially like in our community. Sometimes I'm from Florida, so I'm Southern Black, you know what I'm saying? Like you can think about the stereotypical kind of like Southern person, very mannerable, very maybe hush hush, but also very warm and welcoming. That's kind of my background. So growing up, I think I was an expressive child on the inside, but through like different situations of growing up, like being, you talking too much or you saying the wrong thing or you doing too much, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
those things that continue to happen to you that kind of dim your light definitely got the best of me. So by the time I was in middle school, I wore a jacket every single day because I've always been a cute plush girl. I've always been tall. I'm 5'7", so I've been this height for a minute. And I've always been, like one of the bigger, chubbier kids. So I wore a jacket every day. I didn't like to talk. I remember being sick every single morning on my way to school. And I'm learning that was like crippling anxiety to the point where like I did not want to get out the car. Like my stomach just hurt the whole day. Probably
Aw.
because I didn't eat any either, because I didn't like to eat around people.
Mhm.
So those types of reoccurring things that kind of carried out up until like half of my time in high school. By the time I got to high school, I became a little bit more outgoing because I knew I wanted to go to college. I knew I was going, and I knew the requirements were that you had to do something. So I think I put some of those fears aside, and that helped me like be louder. I did sports. I was like Spanish club president, but I did a bunch of random stuff, but it was great. Um, and then through college, I still struggled though to really like speak my mind, outside of like my close friend group. I've always struggled with speaking my mind and what people would think about me and those types of things. And also even as a creative, standing out.
Mhm.
I think people like always admire celebrities or even those people who get a lot of attention, but a lot can come with that if you're not built and ready for that, right? So
Right.
I think I've naturally always gotten a lot of like attention, whether I was trying to or not, just because I would do like, I wore like huge bamboo earrings in like seventh grade, like just stuff that made me happy on the inside because I wasn't that expressive. So by the
Right.
time I got to college, I battled with that, but then toward the end of it, I was like, I'm wearing these bright colors. I'm gonna speak up. I'm gonna do what I want to do, because I had also started reflecting as I became more spiritual at how many things like I regretted not doing because I wasn't confident in myself and because I didn't want to say anything. So then here comes the podcast. So I did 4 years of undergrad at FAMU, Florida A&M University, the number one public HBCU, number one HBCU in the whole world, if you ask me. And then I did a year of graduate school at FSU. And during that year at graduate school, it was very hard. The pandemic had just started. This was like, I started graduate school fall 2019. So this is 2020. Like the pandemic had just started. So this is July 2020. I'm sitting in my room. I'm like, I have to do something creative because just doing work all day and just going to work all day is not going to cut it for me. Like I'm used to doing more. And my friends have been telling me for a while, I should do a podcast. I should do YouTube. I should speak up more because I'm funny and I'm cute and all this stuff. So I was just sitting there one day in the middle of the night and I was like, I couldn't even tell you, it wasn't even a plan. A voice was just like, just get started. It literally had to be like 11 o'clock at night. I made the name, I created the link tree, I created the logo. Like literally, I think I recorded the episode the next like day, and within a week, this podcast was up and running. So that's awesome. And I don't even remember where this name came from. I think I was probably talking to myself out loud or talking to God because I be doing that. And I was like, I wasn't on the first time child. And I'm like, we just ran with that. So it's going on 2 years now that I've had the podcast.
That is, wow, that's great. So I was in a very similar situation growing up. So I get it. I was always the taller kid. I was always a little bit, more on the chubby side. So I completely understand what it's like to kind of feel like an outcast when you're kind of that bigger kid per se in the group, in the grade, in the school, whatever it is. But I'm proud of you for like finally using your voice. I'm proud of you for your platform. And I'm glad that sometimes you just have to like do it.
Yes.
So I'm glad that like that one night you were like, I'm just gonna do this. And look at you now.
It's like, oh, this has gotten really far. Wow, it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's great. And it's great like what you're doing, the message you're sharing, all that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you. Or not thank you. You're welcome.
You're fine.
So given the nature of your podcast, the name, what you're doing with it, have you gotten any backlash or negative reactions, especially as a Black woman?
None that I've heard. And within my own head, I have challenged myself on a lot of topics. Like I was never the outward person to talk about like sex or like even like racism and stuff like that. Because I can say I've probably had in the past more people pleasing tendencies just because of like my upbringing and being really like kind of reared to be more meek. So if anybody's been opposition to me, it's been to me, honestly. So I would say outside of that, no, but I know I've definitely talked to like people I'm close to in my life about certain topics I would want to talk about on the podcast that might have more to do with like how they would be perceived. So that's still something I'm trying to figure out. So for instance, talking about like abuse and things like that, first thing people close to you gonna say is, I didn't beat you, I didn't do this and that. And I'm like, bro, so what can I tell my story because we're not on the same page? You know what I'm saying? So kind of waiting on everybody to be on the same page with that. I don't know if I'm gonna wait on everybody. I don't think I am. I think I'm gonna get to a point where I'm like, I don't give a fuck, this is what happened. Can I cuss also?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. So those sorts of things, I would say that it could be like the most backlash was just probably from like personal relationships. And I don't think I've gotten to the point, it's definitely coming, but where I'm like, out there and I'm circuiting in the podcast space. But I could definitely see that coming just because nobody expects me to say shit because I'm tall and I'm big. And that's weird. I don't even like the word big. I don't even feel no kind of way about my body, but to other people, I'm curvy, thick, plus size, whatever. So therefore I'm already supposed to shut the hell up. I'm a Black woman, so I'm supposed to like, you know what I'm saying? Like wait for it to get checked by a white man or somebody else in corporate who feels more comfortable with it. So I'm supposed to shut the hell up there. And what else? Just mainly those two things. So I could definitely see the backlash coming at some point with people who are uncomfortable with the truth. So
I mean, I think like you were saying, like it's your platform. I think, you should be able to explore, discuss different topics. And I think ultimately, like you said, you're going to get to a point where you're going to be like, hey, I'm just going to do it. It's my story. It's part of who I am. And you just going to have to get over it.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that point. I'm working through it.
So tell us a little bit more about what your podcast focuses on. I know you said like you get big like creatives and entrepreneurs and things like that. So what else do you like to focus on your podcast?
Definitely spirituality. I think that's how the podcast got started. Even when you look at the titles of some of the podcast names, I would just literally use just one liners, like one word. It would just be like peace, detachment, live your life. Now it's grown where it's like XYZ topic with XYZ person if I have a guest. But the foundation was definitely from a spiritual place. Because at that time, like I was saying, I felt really stunned, like, just like closed in being in graduate school. My program wasn't really what I thought it was. And I just didn't have an outlet, and it was a pandemic. So I was used to being on FAMU's campus, which is beautiful, walking around on the quad, like hanging out with my friends. It's always something to get into, always something to do, always some energy away from me to burn off energy. And y'all could tell I'm very energetic. I'm talking a million miles a minute. So that's very important for me. I'm like a puppy in a park. So with being in that space where I really completely felt closed in, like quite literally into only my room, into only doing this program, I was like, I have to create this lane. And then that lane came from spirituality. So that was the first foundation. And from there, it really is a range of topics, which I love. That I love about that it's not just, we only talk about this one thing, only this one thing is safe. I've had people come on who have talked about, like sexual abuse. I've had people come who talked about racism and our use of AAVE and how people are trying to take that away from us and want to monopolize how we express ourselves as Black people. I've had entrepreneurs come on to talk about, letting spirit lead them into being like a yoga instructor. So it's really a variety of topics, but I will say I think the core of it does come down to spirit, because I'm not asking no questions that's cute. I'm going to ask you some raw stuff like what God said. Like,
right, for sure. So,
yeah.
Oh gosh. But that's really great. And I think we need more people in the community who are willing to have these conversations, who are willing to, like I always say, start the discussion, be the one starting. And I think that what you're doing on your platform, and I mean, overall, one of the things I saw like with your social media, especially, is empowerment. And I love that. You're not like you said, obviously you can relate to specific people because you may have certain things that you guys connect with, i.e. like being tall and being, curvy or whatever they want to call it.
Right. Like, girl, what does it matter? I don't know what I'm here. I'm a potato with legs.
Right. Like, what do you want me to say?
Right.
But I love that you're just sending out positive vibes, positive energy. And I think we need more of that. Like, I think we need more people who are willing to break the norm of what, we're used to talking about in Black households, and really starting something bigger.
Yes. And I will say, even with like our Black ass friends, like definitely it starts in our homes as well. But like me, like going off to college and stuff, I'm not in my home anymore, or like living in Atlanta right now. Like I live with my family, but I'm not in my primary home that I was raised in. So I've even learned like I can affect other people's homes by speaking up. So with me having like this new, found discovery of being loud enough, the first time I started bringing topics to my friends, stuff that didn't even make, like a podcast episode, but like things I noticed that I felt like we should talk about.
Right.
So I'm like, with some of my friends, I'm like, some of y'all are skinny. Have y'all ever thought about fat phobia? You know what I'm saying? Some of y'all are light skinned. Have you ever talked about colorism before? You know what I'm saying? Some of y'all come from a more privileged background. Do you understand what it's like for people who were not in the same situation as you? So I love that I've grown to not be afraid to have those hard conversations with people closest to me,
That's important. But it's very, like you said, it's very true. And people don't realize those things until somebody kind of asks them. And it's they're face to face with it. Like, oh, am I a little fat? Like, can I be, make kind of fat phobic comments? Or, oh, I am, lighter than somebody else in the group. Am I, making comments, I call it light skin privilege or something. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's what society says. But I think being able to have those conversations with your friends is also extremely important, because if your friends aren't willing to have those conversations, then how can we all grow together?
Yeah.
And you don't want to address the issue at hand.
Yeah. I saw this quote a couple years ago. I don't remember it verbatim, but the gist of the quote was basically like, how are you going to say that you're authentic and show up for, you know, the rest of the world, people who don't really know what it's like to live inside your home and be this person, right? Whether it's like
Right.
this inspirational, motivational, whatever person, but the people closest to you do not recognize that person because you're not real about who you are around them, and you water things down, and you don't even hold them accountable like you do the outside world. So I'm
Exactly.
definitely like drawing more out of the quote, but that's how I read into it. It's like, wow, if you're not real to the people that's really around you and really rawly know you, like it's no point in me coming in here, oh, I'm all cute and positive, and then at home
Right.
I'm a bat out of hell to people. Like, why would I why are we doing this?
Yeah.
It's weird.
Like
Yeah.
toothpaste.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's not being authentic to yourself. You're gonna always have this constant internal battle about who to show up as. Girl, just show up as you, wig on or off. Just show up.
Right. No,
Yeah.
I get it. I had to kind of do some of my own reflection when it comes to, especially like being privileged, like with my upbringing,
Mm-hmm.
or even being a lighter skin complexion. I've noticed, you know, with other people in my life, or my girlfriend too, for example, she's dark skinned, and we have very different experiences with our skin complexions, because I tell people all the time, like, I'm fortunate in the aspect that I have never had someone be openly racist to me. Like, I've never felt like I was being discriminated against or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I know a lot of people who can't say the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that kind of impact it can have on people, because I see it all the time with people around me. And so I get it. Like, it took me, once I got older, to really sit back and say, wow, like, I'm 21, about to be 22, and I've never had a racial experience where I can say, like, I remember what it was like and how I felt in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And even with the privilege thing, like, growing up, I was very privileged. I was very spoiled and things like that. And so I also had to reflect that, especially when you're young, you don't get it as much. But
Right.
then when you get older, you're like, oh, like, I really did have it good. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I get it. And
Yeah.
it's definitely a lot, like, to take in and to really think about.
Mm-hmm.
But how can you grow as a person if you're not taking those chances to reflect on the harder things to think about and to look at?
Yes. Yes. I was definitely gonna say self-reflection is like a core. What's funny is even on a lot of my episodes, I'll start by saying, y'all, I was just thinking about this. Or it will, like, literally, like the first 2 seasons, like season and a half of my podcast is me talking at 2 a.m. So y'all know I was up thinking, staring at the ceiling. You know, I was up rattling things around in my brain. But that's so important for me to have, like, it's like a cleansing process to
Right.
self-reflect, also release, because I feel like we just be sometimes hopping from, like, I'm a manifest and then I'm gonna want this. You got to release something at some point, sis. Come on, you must
Mm-hmm.
go. So I think that's very important just along our journeys in general.
Yes, very, very true. So the next thing I want to ask you is, what is any advice you would give to someone who would want to start a podcast and maybe is a little shy or too afraid about what people are going to think?
Okay. Whoa. Okay. Because this is gonna be deeper than probably what you expected. Okay. So to me, for me, I'm learning that doing anything creative is very like spiritual and personal for me, right? So I'm never just going to up and just start something I truly don't believe in. I'm never just going to up and support somebody I truly don't believe in. So I think first you really got to have a meeting with yourself about who you are and how you're dedicated to showing up. Because as you journey along doing something that's of your passion, you're creative, you want to do a podcast specifically, you're going to get opportunities. Like, for instance, like this, somebody's interviewing me and I'm usually like the interviewing person. So you know, if you're thinking big like that, know that you're going to get opportunities. But I would definitely advise that you are prepared for those things as best as you can, which first starts by being honest with yourself, right? Before you even make an outline and topics or whatever, you're going to have to talk. You're going to have to show up. So knowing who you are would be very helpful. So in the more spiritual, internal sense, in that matter, like really know yourself, know what you want to be grounded in, know what you want to keep pouring your energy into when it comes to something creative. Now, in the more like physical realm of it, like actually starting it up, I would definitely say do some research. I researched for like a second. I saw Anchor, so that's what I've been using since I got started in 2020. do research on what platforms, do research on like a scheduling kind of system, like the best days to post your podcast, the best kind of captions, the best way to build an audience, consistency, those types of things. Researching like if you want to have a motto, if you want the name for your podcast, you know what I'm saying, a logo, you might want to use Fiverr to just, because I did that once. I just paid somebody just to create me a quick logo or whatever. So research. So those two elements, knowing yourself internally, what you want to keep pouring into, what you really care about, because this is like a, I don't want to say job because it has bad connotation. This is a thing. We're doing a thing here. So make sure you want to keep doing this thing, you know, make sure it's a real thing. Decide your own thing, right? And do your research on your thing so that your thing can sustain and grow. That's
the thing for me.
It's the thing. It's your thing.
Oh, that's great. I had one time considered a podcast and I was like, I feel like
for everybody.
I don't know. I had to do it once for a class and I was like, oh my God, this really isn't that bad. But I think it's more so like, I mean, I guess since I do make YouTube videos too, it's really no different. Because I'm like, well, in a YouTube video, I'm just talking to myself and looking at myself on camera. In a podcast, I'm just talking on a microphone. Like,
yeah.
What's the big difference here?
For you. But I will say, just get started. See, like with that, you would not even have known how you felt about a podcast had you not done it for class. Like, also, big key. Just start, please. If it's dusty, you can delete it. I got old stuff I was using, old logos, everything that is deleted off of my Instagram. Can't nobody see it but me. Hopefully it's people's brains. But just get started, you know, give yourself that chance. I think I even have an episode that's literally called Just Get Started. That's funny.
So I'll close it up with, where do you see yourself? Where do you see your podcast within the next, we'll say 5 to 10 years? And are there any sponsorships that you would hope for or you're hoping for?
Okay, so I'm gonna start in reverse. So sponsorship part, because that's another part of somebody who wants to start a podcast. What I've learned from podcasting, if you're trying to make money from this, it's not the way to go. Not just doing a podcast in and of itself. So I'm gonna drop some gems real quick. So as far as like literally sponsor ads and stuff like that, you don't make a lot of money from those. How people make money from these things is literally like promoting something that you're already doing. But if you're just doing this because you love it, that's fine, because I'm still at the stage doing it because I love it, but other things will come. So sponsorships, I will say that is something you should research. For me, I really have not thought about that much at all. Like my brain now, since I like have accepted that this podcast can be bigger, I can put more energy to it, can really go far. I've been thinking about that a little, but I don't even know what's out there because there are so many new things, and also like, because there's so many new things, I don't know what's out there. Like, you know, now people are looking for influencers and content creators and this and that. That wasn't really the case before the pandemic. It wasn't as big. So you're making me realize that's something I need to start thinking about. Like, what are my dreams? Like sponsorships or partnerships, collaborations, that kind of thing. Because I can't think of anything up the top of my head right now. Maybe something vegan, because I'm vegan. Like, that's the simplest thing to come up with. Yeah. So I don't know as far as sponsorships. But you did ask, where do I see the podcast in 5 years and in 10 years? So in 5 years, baby, we're little Miss Oprah. That's what I'm seeing. We're little Miss Sarah Jakes Roberts. Like, we're little Miss Elizabeth Gilbert. I see myself on the stage. I see myself speaking on panels. I see myself in the universities, in the hallways, in the byways, and the highways. I just see myself just talking over people, just being bigger. And that's something I also just realized as of recent, when I start taking myself more seriously with the podcast. I'm like, because I've seen other podcasters and groups and stuff. I went to a live event this summer for this podcast I used to listen to. And I was like, we can do live events and like talk to people live. Like, like your brain, like it don't stop. It don't stop. It won't stop. So definitely in 5 years, on somebody's panel, traveling. Like, I don't even see this being just like a simple thing no more. It's like, it's a whole ordeal. I'm a whole public speaker, like real big speaker. Shout out to Kevin Gates, awesome. Like huge. 10 years, definitely speaking. I don't know. I don't know if the podcast will be like a podcast, but I will pray that the purpose is still there to inspire people to speak up, to be loud enough the first time, you know what I'm saying, to trust themselves, trust their intuition, trust who they are. I hope that is still going strong, but I definitely see the platform being so much bigger. I can't even imagine what 10 years, because if I'm talking about traveling and all that in 5 years, what's 10 years? A TV show, a movie, like, you know what I'm saying? An audible deal, like a book, couple books.
You could be on the reel or something.
Like, yeah. Like, that's on God. God got the 10-year part. All I can think is 5. God got the 10 years for me, because it's gotta be big. It's just gotta be.
That is awesome. That is one thing I'm seeing in my interviews, is like people speaking life into themselves, and I love it.
Yeah. I mean, you have to.
Yeah, you do.
This is a whole nother part of being a creative. I was just talking to someone before this. I was actually just doing a podcast episode, and we talked about that for a bit, of like being a creative, like, and it's not to say anything against people around you, but everybody not built the same, everybody not thinking the same, and it can really get lonely. So you really have to, it's like really developing a relationship with yourself and whatever God you believe in, whatever spiritual practice, or something sometimes outside of you, because everybody around you is not going to get it.
Right.
Period. You know what kind of society, y'all know we live in a 9-to-5, capitalist, misogynist, sexist, racist, discriminatory, backwards ass country, right? None of that is set up for you to thrive. It's just not inherently, especially when we're talking about Black people and Black women. They want you to fail, but you will not fail. You will not. But with that, you got to build up a lot of protection, a lot of routine, a lot of intentions for yourself, because the rest of the world is not going to do that. So that's what I've kind of learned and gathered.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is one of those things where if you don't believe in yourself, then why should other people? So you've got to believe in yourself. You've got to know that you can do whatever you put your mind to, and you can't stop even when it gets hard. And I know that's like, for me as a creative, that is one of the hardest things is, okay, I know it's not going how I want it right now, but this isn't the end. And one thing I had to kind of learn for myself was, I actually think it was in the call I had with you.
Oh, wow.
For the first time, was that even if one person listens, it's one person who maybe got something that they didn't have before or something like that. So even, I don't do this to get famous or go viral. I'm just sharing my who I am, sharing what I feel like I have to share with the world. And I'm hoping that, at least one person gets something out of each video I post.
Yeah, and they will. Like, that's the crazy part. Like, I always say, if we were meant to be by ourselves and not share, we would all be on separate planets. Like, we would not be on the same planet with everybody else here looking in our faces. With that, I really do feel like the experiences that we go through is not just for us. It's not just for us to dwell on, and it's not just for us to overthink, and it's not just for us to know and big ourselves up on, like, oh, I made a meal moving forward. Like, you did that for somebody else. One person can't have $1 million. Maybe you can, but nonetheless, I think that our experiences are more meaningful, more fulfilling, make more sense as we connect with other people and stop worrying about all this man-made stuff of how many followers, how many analytics, all this stuff fake. Don't y'all see on TikTok, they can't even gather this algorithm? There is no algorithm, and people just pressing stuff. Let it go, shoot your stuff and move forward. It's gonna happen.
TikTok is playing us all.
It's just messing us up. So let's just all do what we can from an intentional, grounded, beautiful space to help our neighbor. That's the
I love that.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me, for coming on, sharing a little bit of who you are. I'm very excited to be on your podcast.
Yes, we have
and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you so much for asking me to do this interview. Thank you so much for even investing in my podcast, even considering me to come on here to be a part of your platform. I really do appreciate it.
Of course. I'm so glad that you agreed to it and I got to sit and talk with you.